Welcome back to my channel. Today we're diving deep into one of the most dramatic and pivotal storylines in CBS's The Bold and the Beautiful. This is a storyline that will keep you on the edge of your seat as we explore the dangerous consequences of deception, jealousy, and passion that spiral completely out of control. So sit back, relax, and prepare yourself for an episode that delivers intense drama, shocking revelations, and unforeseen tragedy that will change everything for the characters involved. The seduction that started it all. Dylan has been playing a dangerous game of seduction with Will, and in this particular moment, her intentions become crystal clear. She positions herself intimately on Will's lap, getting closer and closer to him with each passing second. The chemistry between them is undeniable, and Dylan is doing everything in her power to make sure that Will feels her presence, her warmth, and her unmistakable attraction to him. This is not a casual moment of affection. This calculated move by Dylan to deepen her connection with Will and perhaps manipulate him in ways that will benefit her agenda. What Dylan doesn't realize in this moment of passion and distraction is that someone has been watching. Someone who has been keeping close tabs on Will's movements and his interactions with other women. That someone is Ivy, and she has just stumbled upon a scene that will shatter her world and set off a chain reaction of events that nobody could have predicted or prevented. The discovery that Dylan is seducing Will is enough to send Ivy into a state of shock and emotional upheaval. The witness who sees too much. Ivy peers through the window of the room where Dylan and Will are together, and what she witnesses absolutely stuns her. She can see Dylan sitting on Will's lap, can see the intimate nature of their interaction, and see the way they are looking at each other with undeniable passion and intensity. For Ivy, this moment feels like a betrayal of the highest order. Her mind races with 1,000 different thoughts and emotion all at once. She feels shock, anger, disappointment, and hurt all swirling together inside her. The question that immediately floods through Ivy's mind is, what should she do with this information? She knows that if she keeps this discovery to herself, she becomes complicit in whatever is happening between Dylan and Will. She also knows that if she reveals what she has seen, there will be serious consequences for everyone involved. But Ivy is not the type of person to stay silent when she discovers something this significant. She believes in honesty and truth, and she knows what keeping the secret would go against everything she stands for. Ivy's thoughts quickly turn to Elektra, who has a right to know what is happening right before her eyes. Ivy knows that Elektra would want to be informed about this shocking discovery, and she feels obligated to share this information with her. After all, if the situation were reversed, wouldn't Elektra do the same thing for Ivy? The decision to tell Elektra feels like the right choice, the moral choice, the choice that someone who values honesty and integrity would make. The confrontation that changes everything. What happens next is inevitable. Dylan becomes aware that Ivy has seen her with Will. Dylan spots Ivy looking through the window, and in that moment she knows that her secret has been exposed. The realization hits Dylan like a physical blow. She understands immediately that Ivy is likely to run straight to Elektra and reveal everything she has witnessed. Dylan knows that Elektra finding out about her interaction with Will could spell disaster for her plans and her relationships with the people she cares about. Dylan and Ivy come face to face, and what follows is a heated confrontation filled with accusations, denials, and emotional intensity. Their argument escalates quickly as Ivy demands answers, and Dylan becomes increasingly defensive about her actions. Ivy accuses Dylan of betraying trust and of playing games with Will's emotions. Dylan, on the other hand, tries to justify her actions and downplay the significance of what Ivy has seen. She argues that it was just an innocent moment between two adults, nothing more and nothing less. But Ivy won't accept Dylan's explanations and rationalizations. She is determined to confront Dylan about her behavior and to make sure that Dylan understands the gravity of what she has done. The argument between them becomes more and more intense with each passing moment. Voices are raised, harsh words are exchanged, and the emotional tension in the room becomes almost unbearable. Neither woman is willing to back down or compromise. Both of them feel strongly about their positions, and both of them are unwilling to see the situation from the other person's perspective. The tragic moment of no return. In the heat of this intense and escalating argument, something terrible happens. Dylan, in her anger and frustration, makes a move that she will regret for the rest of her life. As the argument reaches its peak, as both women are shouting and gesturing wildly at each other, Dylan's hand strikes Ivy with a force that neither of them anticipated. It's an accident, a moment of pure instinct driven by fear and desperation, but the consequences are far more severe than Dylan ever imagined. Ivy falls to the ground, and Dylan immediately realizes that something is terribly wrong. Ivy is not moving, not responding to Dylan's increasingly panicked calls. Dylan drops to her knees beside Ivy, desperately trying to revive her, trying to get some sign of consciousness from her friend. But it becomes clear within moments that Ivy is gone. In a shocking twist of fate, in a moment of pure accident and misfortune, Dylan has killed Ivy. The realization washes over her like a wave of ice-cold water. She has committed an act that cannot be undone, a tragedy that will haunt her for the rest of her life. Dylan sits there in shock, unable to fully comprehend what has just happened. Minutes earlier, she and Ivy were arguing about a betrayal of trust. Now Ivy is dead on the floor and Dylan is responsible. The weight of this realization is almost too much for Dylan to bear. She has destroyed another human life. She has taken away someone's daughter, someone's friend, someone's sister. The guilt that begins to consume her is overwhelming and absolute. The cover-up that only makes things worse. As the initial shock begins to wear off, Dylan's mind shifts into survival mode. She realizes that if the police discover what has happened, if they learn that she accidentally killed Ivy in a moment of uncontrolled anger, her life will be over. She will face criminal charges, she will go to prison, and everything she has worked for will be destroyed. In her desperate attempt to avoid these consequences, Dylan makes a decision that will only serve to make matters worse. Dylan decides to hide the body. She cannot call for help, she cannot confess to what has happened, and she cannot leave Ivy lying there for someone else to discover. So Dylan, working through her panic and her fear, manages to move Ivy's body and bury it in a location where she believes it will never be found. She buries Ivy and tries to convince herself that no one will ever know what happened in that room, that her secret will be safe, and that she can move forward with her life as if this terrible tragedy never occurred. But Dylan is fooling herself. She cannot simply erase what has happened. The act of burying Ivy's body does not erase the fact that Ivy is dead. It does not erase the guilt that Dylan will carry with her for the rest of her life. And most importantly, it does not erase the questions that will inevitably arise when people begin to notice that Ivy is missing. The investigation begins. Ivy's disappearance does not go unnoticed. Friends and family members quickly realize that Ivy has vanished without a trace. No one has heard from her in days. She is not answering her phone, she is not showing up to her usual activities, and no one knows where she is or what has happened to her. The concern for Ivy's safety grows with each passing day. People begin to fear the worst, and soon the authorities are brought into the situation. The police department launches an investigation into Ivy's disappearance. Detective Baker is assigned to the case, and he begins the painstaking process of gathering information, interviewing witnesses, and trying to piece together what happened to Ivy. Baker is experienced and thorough. He knows that in cases like these, the truth often lies in the details, in the small inconsistencies in people's stories, in the things that witnesses remember or forget to mention. As Detective Baker's investigation deepens, he begins to look closely at the people in Ivy's life. He examines her relationships, her interactions with others, and her movements in the days leading up to her disappearance. He interviews people who were in contact with Ivy, asking them detailed questions about what they saw and heard. With each interview, each piece of evidence, and each small clue, the investigation gets closer to the truth. Dylan, meanwhile, is walking a tightrope of deception. She must act as though Ivy's disappearance is as shocking and troubling to her as it is to everyone else. She must pretend that she knows nothing about where Ivy has gone or what has happened to her. She must participate in the search efforts while knowing full well that Ivy is dead and buried because of her actions. The stress and anxiety of maintaining this facade begins to take its toll on Dylan. She becomes increasingly paranoid, increasingly anxious about being discovered, and increasingly desperate to keep her secret hidden. Every conversation with Detective Baker feels like a test that Dylan might fail at any moment. Every question that Baker asks sends a spike of fear through Dylan's heart. She worries that her story might have inconsistencies, that Baker might notice something in her behavior that suggests she knows more than she is saying, that a piece of evidence might surface that connects her directly to Ivy's disappearance. The weight of this secret, the constant fear of discovery, begins to consume her thoughts and her emotions. The unraveling of deception. As the investigation progresses, Detective Baker begins to develop theories about what might have happened to Ivy. He starts to piece together a timeline of events on the day that Ivy disappeared. He interviews Will about his interactions with Dylan and Ivy on that particular day. He questions Dylan extensively about her whereabouts and her knowledge of Ivy's disappearance. Baker is methodical and patient, but he is also persistent and determined to uncover the truth. The pressure mounts on Dylan with each passing day. The investigation is closing in on the truth, and Dylan knows that it is only a matter of time before something gives. She becomes increasingly unstable, increasingly prone to emotional outbursts, and increasingly unable to maintain the pretense that everything is normal. People around her begin to notice that something is wrong. They see the anxiety in her eyes, they hear the tension in her voice, and they sense the desperation in her actions. Dylan finds herself caught between the unbearable weight of her guilty conscience and the paralyzing fear of being discovered. She wants to confess, to unburden herself of the terrible secret that she has been carrying. But confessing would mean admitting to killing Ivy, would mean facing serious criminal consequences, would mean losing everything that matters to her. So she continues to deny, continues to lie, and continues to live with the constant fear that her secret will be exposed. The implications and consequences. This storyline in Times the Bold and the Beautiful Times represents one of the most dramatic and consequential arcs in the show's history. It explores themes of jealousy, deception, accidental tragedy, and the desperate measures that people are willing to take to hide their secrets. It examines how one moment of violence born out of passion and fear can spiral into a much larger tragedy that affects multiple lives and relationships. The investigation by Detective Baker will eventually lead to the discovery of Ivy's body and the truth about what happened. The consequences for Dylan will be severe and life-altering. Her actions will impact not only her own life, but also the lives of everyone around her. Will must grapple with the knowledge that he was inadvertently the catalyst for these tragic events. Elektra must deal with the loss of her friend and the shocking revelation of what Dylan is capable of doing. The entire community will be shaken by the revelation that someone they thought they knew, someone they lived alongside, was capable of such a terrible act. This storyline is a reminder that, in the world of soap operas, nothing is simple, nothing is predictable, and nothing is certain. Relationships can change in an instant. Trust can be shattered, and lives can be forever altered by a single moment of poor judgment or uncontrolled emotion. The drama, the suspense, and the emotional intensity of this arc will keep viewers captivated and on the edge of their seats as they await the revelation of the truth and the consequences that will follow.